find the vertical and the horizontal asymptote. Given the function, we have 2x plus 1 over square root of x squared minus 9. Step number 1, find the domain. By referring to the function, we have the numerator, which is a linear. So if it is a linear, automatically the domain will be a real number. Next, we have to observe the denominator, where we have x squared minus 9. And we will have the situation square root. If the situation is square root, it should be greater and equals to 0. So for this case, it is a denominator, so 0 is not allowed. So now we have to deal with the inequalities. First, we have to factorize the situation. Since this is the simplest form, so it is the time to identify the sign. We have a positive sign. Next, what we have to do is to split the situation and assume positive. So here we have x greater than 3, x greater than negative 3. So now we have a number line, and kindly locate the value and express the situation. So we have x greater than negative 3, x greater than 3. We have negative, 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 so the product will be positive, negative, and then positive. Kindly refers to the sign, which is a positive, so our answer will be at the positive region. Finally, the domain for the function f would be negative infinity until negative 3. When negative 3 is not included, union 3 until infinity, when 3 is not included. So this is the step to identify the domain. Second step, we are going to find the vertical asymptote. So in this case, kindly refers to the domain. So in here, the domain, we have two vertical asymptote. One, x is equals to negative 3, x is equals to 3. Step number 3, we're going to observe the behavior. So before we start, kindly have a number line. So now we have the situation in a number line. So kindly denote it or suggest a value from the left and then from the right towards the negative 3 and the 3. So now kindly refers to negative 3 from the left. So the suggestion value will be negative 3.0001. As for the right, kindly refers to the domain. There is no value or invalid or no domain from the right. So we just ignore the situation from the right. Next, focus on value 3. So in here, from the left, kindly refers to the domain. There is no value or invalid or no domain. So meaning that we can put a cross. From the right towards the 3, so we will have a value which is 3.0001. That will be the suggestion value. Now, let's look at the behavior. So we have limits when x approaching negative 3 from the left for the function 2x plus 1 over square root of x squared minus 9. Next, limit when x approaching negative 3 from the right for the function. So now, first what we have to do is to substitute the value. Kindly refers to this value. If we substitute this value into this part, we will have a negative value plus with 1. So we will have a negative value for the numerator, and for the denominator, negative 3.0001 square, we will have a value which is more than 9. A value which is more than 9 minus with 9, we will obtain a positive value. So as a conclusion, limit when x approaching negative 3 from the left for the function, and we will have a negative infinity, meaning that the function of f decreases without limit when x approaches negative 3 from the left. Next, we are going to discuss on the right. So in here, we have no suggested value, meaning that the value may be negative 2.9999. So now, kindly substitute into this part. The negative 2.999 square, we will obtain a positive value, which is less than 9. A value which is less than 9 minus with the 9, so we will have a negative value. So the value cannot be less than 0 for the case square root. So meaning that there is no value and the situation does not exist. So here we have the situation. So now we're going to discuss the value that is, or the behavior that is approaches the 3. So limit when x approaching 3 from the left for the function 2x plus 1 over square root x squared minus 9. Next case, it will be limit when x approaching 3 from the right for the function So kindly reverse 3 from the left. Notice that there is no suggestion value. Why? Because imagine a value from the left towards the 3 will be 2.999 and 9. If we substitute, we will have a value which is less than 9. A value which is less than 9 minus with 9, automatically you will have a negative value. For the
So maksudnya di sini apa? Tahu tak? Kalau you ambil sini 3 from the left kan 2.9999. Kalau you squarekan dia, automatic nombor itu mesti less than 9. Kalau you gantikan a value which is less than 9 minus with the 9, automatically you akan dapat negative value. So inside the square root, kalau you dapat negative, dia automatic, dia does not exist, dia undefined, dia math error. That's why tak ada benda. Okay, itu situasi dia. Sama juga untuk bahagian ni pun sama.
case square root, the internal value cannot be less than 0 because it will be invalid. So for this case, the situation invalid or does not exist. So for this case, does not exist. Next, let's move on to the right hand side. So limit when x approaching 3 from the right, so the value will be 3.0001. So if we substitute into this part, and we will have a positive value over, if we substitute the value into this part square, so meaning that the value will be more than 9. A value that is more than 9 minus the 9, obviously we will have a positive value. So as a conclusion, limit when x approaching 3 from the right for the function, and we will have a positive infinity. It shows that the function f increase without limit when x approaches 3 from the right. So here we have the behavior and the vertical asymptote. R, x equals to negative 3, x is equals to 3. Step number 4, find the horizontal asymptote. So before we start the discussion, kindly define the situation. Let's say we have square root of x squared. It is equals to absolute value of x. The definition for absolute of x would be x if the domain is greater equals to 0, negative x if the situation is x less than 0. Illustrate the situation in the number line. So now we have the number line and we're going to locate the value 0 and express the situation. We have negative x on the left, x on the right. So now kindly refers to the questions. Find the horizontal asymptote. So we need to state limit when x approaching negative infinity. Another case, limit when x approaching positive infinity. Kindly substitute the function. We have 2x plus 1 over square root of x squared minus 9. Same goes to the right hand side. So let's begin the discussion on the left. If we are going to substitute the value into the function, and we will have negative infinity for the numerator, and for the denominator, obviously we will have a positive infinity. So this is denoted as indeterminate form. What is the strategy to solve this kind of problem? Dividing the numerator and the denominator by referring to the highest power of x for the denominator. I repeat, the highest power of x for the denominator. So limit when x approaching negative infinity, kindly factor out the x. So we will have x bracket 2 plus 1 over x over square root of, we are going to factor out the x squared bracket 1 minus 9 over x squared. By using the properties of the surd, we are going to split the surd. So limit.
So harap anda masih ingat ya, untuk bahagian ini adalah special case. Betul? Dekat bahagian E, sesi yang sebelum ini. So anda boleh rujuk semula lah. Kena beri perhatian ya, sekiranya ada square root dengan x square. Kena guna modulus punya definition.
Limit when x approaching negative infinity over square root of x squared, square root of 1 minus 9 over x squared. So kindly refers to the definition. We have square root of x squared, which is equals to absolute value of x. Based on the definition, we have x and negative x. So for this case, we have a negative infinity, meaning that towards the left. Since x is approaching negative infinity, so negative x is selected for this case. Limit when x approaching negative infinity, we have x bracket 2 plus 1 over x over we have negative x. Based on the definition, we have negative x because x approaching negative infinity, or we can say towards the left. So kindly simplify the situation and we will have limits when x approaching negative infinity, we have a negative bracket 2 plus 1 over x over square root of 1 minus 9 over x squared. Why we obtain negative? Because when we simplify the x and we will have 1. So now kindly substitute the value negative infinity. So do remember the key. We have 1 over infinity will be equals to 0. So for that key, this one will be 0. Same goes to this one. We will have 0. So as a conclusion, we will have negative 2. So next, let's move on to the right hand side. Since we already discussed on the left, so meaning that for the right hand side will be the same as well. So first, substitute the value. We will have a positive infinity for the numerator and a positive infinity for the denominator. So this one considered as indeterminate form. So what is a strategy to solve this kind of problem? Dividing the numerator and the denominator by referring to the highest power of x for the denominator. So now, limits. When x approaching positive infinity, we will have x bracket 2 plus 1 over x over square root of x squared, square root of 1 minus 9 over x squared. So for this case, what is the definition of square root of x squared? So we have a positive infinity, meaning set towards the right. So the function selected will be x for this case. So limit when x approaching positive infinity. So we will have this situation and kindly substitute the function x to replace the square root of x squared because we have a positive infinity. So now we are going to substitute the value infinity. So in this case, we will obtain 0 in this part and 0 in this part. And we have a common x, so we can simplify. So finally, limits when x approaching positive infinity for the function. And we will approach the value 2. So in this case, the horizontal asymptote are y equals to negative 2 as x approaching negative infinity and y is equals to 2 as x approaching positive infinity.
So, itulah rupanya ya untuk kita dapatkan dia punya vertical asymptote dengan dia punya horizontal asymptote. So, sekarang kita akan sketch graph. So, sekarang berdasarkan situasi kita, kita dah extract information ya, yang tadi ya. So, sekarang kita tengok domain kita, negative 3 and 3. So, asymptote kita, x equals to negative 3, x equals to 3. Okay, kemudian horizontal asymptote. Y equals to negative 2, y equals to 2. So ada dua ya. So tak perlu risau. Kita buat dulu apa yang kita ada. So kalau kita tengok sini, negative 3 from the left. Dia negative infinity. So ini situasi dia. Kemudian di bahagian sini does not exist. So abaikan, tak ada graph. Kemudian kita check lagi sekali. Sini does not exist. So tiada graph untuk tengah-tengah itu. Kemudian untuk bahagian ni, 3 from the right. So, dia positive infinity. Okay. Seterusnya, horizontal asymptote, negative infinity. Negative infinity maksudnya towards the left. Kita akan jumpa negative 2. Ada dua kemungkinan. Di atas negative 2 atau di bawah negative 2. Okay. Kalau untuk bahagian ni, ada dua kemungkinan di atas 2 atau di bawah 2. Okay? So, apa yang kita perlu buat sekarang adalah kita perlu key in calculator iaitu masukkan you punya function okay, 2x plus 1 over square root of x square minus 9. Key in function dalam calculator, guna function calculate. Sila tekan calculate, substitute a value. Okay, substitute a value. Let's say saya mula dengan right hand side. Saya substitute 100. So, kita akan dapat apa? 2.01. Bermaksudnya, kita akan dapat jawapan kita di atas 2. 2.01. Calculate sekali lagi, key in negative 100. So, you akan dapat negative 1.99. Beri perhatian ya, negative 1.99. Di mana 1.99 itu? Di atas ke di bawah untuk negatif 2? So, jawapan dia adalah di atas. So, untuk graf ini, dia punya graf adalah begini. So dia naik. Okay. Kemudian dia melepasi dan dia approaching macam ni. So dia tak sentuh negatif tu. Dia approaching saja. Okay. Ini untuk bahagian sebelah kiri. Dan untuk bahagian kanan pun sama. Di sini dia approaching bahagian bawah ni. So y equals to 2. So ini adalah graf untuk fx. So 2x plus 1 over square root of x square plus 9. Okay, pastikan asymptote semua tulis, xy axis kita tulis, dan semua intercept kalau ada mesti kena tulis. So begitulah ya, kita guna limits untuk bantu kita sketch the graph.